Three-Eye Atlas has been haunting the imagination of scientists and stargazers alike for months, a mysterious interstellar visitor glowing with an unnatural shade of emerald. It alters its trajectory unlike that of an asteroid or comet ever ought to. But now, thanks to the James Webb Space Telescope, the mystery has taken a chilling turn. Webb's powerful instruments not only captured Atlas's light, they detected a signal concealed within it, a recurrent sequence deeply embedded in the spectrum. At first it looked like noise, static carried by cosmic radiation, yet when decoded, the patterns revealed something impossible. A well-organized code, not random, not natural, but deliberate. A message implying that Atlas is more than an object. It sends information, transmitting a language in which we are only beginning to decipher. It began when Webb trained its sensitive spectrographs on Atlas, dissecting its glow into wavelengths invisible to the human eye. What ought to have been the chemical fingerprint of an icy body turned out to be laced with anomalies. Certain bands pulsed with perfect regularity, as well as periodic repetition too precise to be arbitrary. Researchers at first dismissed them as instrument glitches, but cross-checks with Earth-based telescopes proved the identical pattern. After the data had been plotted, a startling image appeared to the eye, sequences of rising and falling frequencies that corresponded to spirals, lines, and geometric shapes, ratios that mirrored the golden proportions found in mathematics and nature. There was no radiation in this. It was information encoded into the very light of Atlas. For the first time ever, astronomers weren't looking at a rock. They were deciphering a message that had traveled across the stars. As decoding efforts intensified, researchers realized the code embedded in Atlas's signal was not random. It was based on Fibonacci sequences, prime numbers, long geometric ratios, and patterns theorized as constants across all very building blocks of mathematics that any sophisticated intelligence would employ to communicate. The implications were staggering. If Atlas were transmitting using this mathematical language, then it was intended to be comprehended by anyone who can comprehend logic. And Webb had caught it. What unsettled scientists even more was that the code appeared layered, like pages stacked upon one another. In its most basic form, it spelled out numbers in a series, but deeper analysis revealed maps, star alignments, and even structures resembling blueprints. Atlas was more than just speaking. It was imparting knowledge, and knowledge that seemed to grow more complex the deeper one looked. Humanity had long dreamed of contact with another intelligence. But what Webb found inside Atlas's light looked less like a greeting than instructions. The patterns Webb uncovered didn't just resonate with mathematics. They resonated with historical events. Recruited archaeologists who assisted were shocked to discover that many of the geometric forms hidden in the code matched the ancient symbols carved into monuments. Spirals at New Grange, circles from Mayan glyphs, and ratios etched into the very stones of the Great Pyramid. All had striking resemblances to the emerging sequences from Atlas's signal. How might an interstellar visitor discovered just recently echo symbols thousands of years old? Others suggested a coincidence. Some whispered about forgotten contact. Was it possible that Atlas, or something similar, had passed by Earth before, leaving behind fragments of its code that shaped our earliest civilizations? The greater the number of researchers who compared them, the more difficult it became to ignore the connection. The code was more than foreign. It was familiar, as though it had been woven into the fabric of human culture from its inception. The code inside Atlas's signal unraveled further by the day, and with it grew the unease of those who studied it. Some of the message appeared to talk about star systems. Others hinted at technologies that surpass human understanding. After that came the unsettling revelation for everyone. Embedded deep within the signal was a reiterating citation, a collection of coordinates not in deep space, but within the solar system we inhabit. When mapped, they pointed toward the moon. Theories had been floating around for decades concerning the moon's role as more than a passive body. However, Atlas seemed now to be confirming it. Did the code direct our path to look closer at our nearest neighbor? Was the moon a recipient or even a place to store what Atlas broadcast? For the first time in history, humanity faced the terrifying possibility that we weren't just decoding a signal. We were following a path that had been left for us to follow. The deeper scientists dug into the message, the stranger things became. Research teams decided to test the code by running it through advanced computer simulations to determine whether the sequences translated into images or models. But when they input the raw data, computers across multiple labs began to behave erratically. Software crashed, systems rebooted, and in one alarming instance, an AI built to analyze large datasets began creating models in 3 dimensions on its own. Forms of geometry resembling towers, lattices, and spirals that looked like blueprints for machines. These machines seemed to carry no clear purpose, as if they were small pieces of a larger whole. Engineers acknowledged that the computers weren't malfunctioning. They were following instructions buried in Atlas's signal. The realization was terrifying. The code was never intended to be observed. It was meant to be executed. When Webb's data was examined at ultra-low frequencies, analysts discovered something even more alarming. Between the obvious pulses of prime numbers and spirals were hidden silences. These, at first dismissed as gaps, were revealed to contain faint echoes when amplified. When charted, the echoes formed patterns that mirrored constellations, precise star maps pointing beyond the immediate systems, in addition to particular alignments inside our solar system. One map highlighted Earth, another pointed toward Mars, but the most detailed pointed to the Moon. This suggested that Atlas did more than just broadcast knowledge. It was sending coordinates as though marking waypoints in a much greater journey. Humanity was left with increasing worry that Atlas wasn't just transferring information across space. It was leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, one that appeared to go right through our cosmic backyard. While researchers struggled with the technological implications, doctors and neurologists began reporting anomalies among those who had seen the decoded signal. Researchers who took note of audio translations of Atlas's pulse described vivid hallucinations, visions of glowing spirals and geometric shapes flashing across their minds. EEG scans revealed unusual brain activity, synchronized perfectly with the way the signal moved. Some reported a higher level of consciousness, others suffered severe migraines, and in rare instances people began illustrating intricate geometric symbols that they had never seen before, symbols that matched the code. Encased in the light of Atlas, it became evident that the message was not merely intended for machines. It was designed for humanity itself. Humanity was beginning to resonate with the pulse, as though our brains had been wired long ago to recognize this voice from the stars. As the pieces of the code fell into place, the most unsettling theory of all began to take shape. The message did not appear to be random nor purely informational. It seemed to carry instructions, maps, and triggers that were not just meant to be decoded, but to provoke action. Embedded within the mathematical layers and geometry was a repeating phrase that defied translation, but carried discernible intent, a pattern that analysts described as an invitation. Whether it was an invitation to build, to follow, or to bring something to life already here, no one could say for sure. However, one fact became incontestable: the code was not indifferent. It was a call sent across interstellar space, waiting for a response from someone or something. And now, thanks to the James Webb Telescope, humanity had become that someone. When the signal's code was replicated in isolated computer systems for testing, researchers discovered something terrifying. Even after disconnecting the machines from power sources, some of them continued to emit faint electromagnetic pulses, as if the code itself had etched a mark on the hardware. In one instance, a lab's computers began to sync with one another, with screens flashing and generating binary streams in perfect unison. The engineers swore that no network connected them, but the code had spread, replicating itself like a living organism. For the first time, humanity recognized that the signal was not just information, it was self-sustaining, establishing itself wherever it could enter. And once it took root, it refused to die. As Webb continued to investigate Atlas, astronomers reported a phenomenon that shivered the entire world community. During its pulses, faint arcs of emerald light stretched outward from the object, creating patterns across the night sky visible to high-resolution instruments. When layered over star charts, these arcs formed recognizable spirals, lilies, and symbols, constellations that were identical to the geometric codes Webb had already decoded. However, what most shocked scientists was that these celestial patterns didn't just repeat mathematics. They aligned with ancient sacred sites on Earth: the Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, Teotihuacan, all matched points in the sky lit by Atlas's arcs. It appeared as if the object was sending a message to both the heavens and the earth beneath our feet. a cosmic inscription too vast to ignore. Up until now, the dialogue had seemed binary: Atlas broadcasting, humanity decoding. But then came evidence of something entirely new. As researchers listened to the layers they had decoded, they detected minuscule distortions that matched the initial pulse of Atlas. These distortions were similar to echoes, but they had arrived prior to the signal itself. When analyzed, the distortions revealed patterns that didn't belong to the source and weren't created by human interference. It was as though there was now a third voice in the conversation, one that took place behind the pulses, layering its own contribution into the code. Some suggested it was the moon resonating like a relay. Others feared it was something else entirely, something already here answering in a language we were still unable to decipher. Humanity had stumbled not onto a message, but onto an ongoing conversation that had never truly stopped. Lastly, as the code was broken down, analysts discovered an order that went against every presumption. Instead of pointing outward to the stars, the final layers of the message pointed inward toward the planet itself. Using cutting-edge simulations, the sequences resolved into a map of Earth's magnetic field, including distortions that did not currently exist in scientific models. When researchers compared the patterns, they realized with horror that the distortions matched anomalies recently recorded in Earth's geomagnetic shield: weaknesses, subtle cracks, and shifting poles. Atlas had not just sent coordinates to Mars or the Moon. It had encoded an understanding of the planet's vulnerabilities, even those humanity's knowledge was only beginning to uncover. The code was not merely a message. This was a diagnosis, or possibly a warning, written into the very structure of our world. As the signal spread across labs and observatories, odd reports started to surface, not from machines but from people. Researchers who spent long hours studying the decoded sequences began to have vivid dreams filled with pulsating geometric lines, spirals, and green light. Some described voices speaking in tones they couldn't comprehend, whereas others awoke with sketches they had already memorized, drawings of intricate patterns identical to fragments of the code. Psychologists were perplexed, but neurologists noticed a troubling pattern. The mental activity of the affected showed synchronization with the same rhythms detected in Atlas's signal. The code was more than communicating through instruments anymore. It was seeping into human consciousness, weaving itself into the architecture of dreams. The division between observation and possession became muddled, leaving humanity to wonder if simply looking at the signal allowed it inside our minds. As this psychological wave spread, archaeologists were drawn back into the debate. They were aware that the ancient monuments centered on the stars thousands of years ago matched the geometric ratios buried within Atlas's code. But the most chilling revelation came when magnetic surveys of these sites detected faint low-frequency pulses in sync with the object's current signal. The pyramids of Giza and Teotihuacan's temples appeared to have a faint resonance, as if they were amplifiers built not for human ceremonies, but for cosmic communication. It appeared that these structures were not random cultural expressions. They were echoes of the same code etched into Earth long before Webb ever discovered it in the stars. Humanity had never assumed it was the monument builder. But what if we had merely followed encoded instructions from ages ago?